Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation. I think I was waiting for my video to start, but I'm here to engage with you in a conversation about Labor Day. I would usually be joined by my good friend and brother, Tommy Lewis. He is on assignment, actually on vacation and on the road, and will be joining us again next week. But I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be able to talk to you myself. For those of you in our community that are joining us this morning, I certainly want you to weigh in on the conversation. Today, this weekend, is a celebration of Labor Day. So on Monday, we'll celebrate Labor Day. And this weekend is typically a long weekend for people then. Labor Day is a national holiday that was put in place back in 1894 by President Grover Cleveland as a way to sort of appease the union after a big strike. He just wanted to say to them that that workers are valuable to this country. They are a part of what makes us successful and allows us to prosper. So he wanted to make sure that every worker got a day off. And so that's why we celebrate Labor Day. Usually we celebrate it. It denotes the end of summer. Kids are going back to school. I don't know about you, but I know that as I get older, I'm getting more nostalgic, or I see things differently now that I'm older. I was driving to work the other day, and it was early in the morning, and the kids were lining up at the bus stops. And I saw this little black girl that was running on her way to the elementary school down the street from our house. And she was really tiny. And she reminded me of my daughter, Jillian, when she was that age. And she had dropped something, and then she went back and picked it up, and her braids were bobbing all around. And I just really fell in love with that scene. And when I see young families, I get excited for them. I think that's probably a sign of getting older, that you recognize that the most important things in life are free. And we got to take time to smell the roses and take in what's most beautiful in life. And work can be one of those things. I happen to be a person that loves what I do. I love to work. But for the last, this last week, it was a great week for me. But for 2 weeks before that, I don't know about you, but man, I was just sluggish. I was not getting up early. You know, I usually love to get up early and get that shower and then get off to work and try to beat everybody into the office. And, 2 weeks before this last week, man, I was 9:30, 10, dragging myself in the office. My wife, Judy, was looking at me like, what are you doing still here? And I was just kind of chilling. But this last week, I sort of got that spark back and really was grateful to be able to get up early in the morning, feeling as though I have a purpose in life. I still love what I do. And what I'd like to do today, in part, is kind of go back and share many of the jobs that I've worked over my lifetime and some of the lessons that I've learned from each of those. My mother was a preacher. My father was a consultant, an entrepreneur. My grandfather was a farmer. And I remember my father telling us stories about my grandfather getting up 3:34 in the morning. Farmers, man, their day starts super early. And they get up, and before the sun is even out, he's out with that tractor and he's tilling the field. And my father and his siblings learned their work ethic from growing up on a farm. I think a lot of the young people today could use a farming experience, some even in my house. But I think that developing a strong work ethic may be one of the most important skills that you can develop in life. Because if a man, if a woman, if a boy or girl won't work, then oftentimes it becomes difficult to eat. And so I was grateful that my parents, as we were growing up, there were five of us. We had chores. and you better not let my father come home from work and those chores not be done. And my mother used to have sayings like, if I'm working, everybody's working. My mother was a preacher, and a lot of people might not think that, being a preacher and evangelist is work, but it was. We would go around the country, spend a lot of time in Fort Wayne. That's where I was born, but spend a lot of time in Fort Wayne doing tent meetings. My mom would rent a tent and put it out on a big corner there in Fort Wayne, and she would just hold revivals. And we would have to sleep under the tent so that nobody would walk away with the equipment. I'll never forget waking up one morning, and there was a wino that had wandered into the tent, and he was standing over my grandmother. And my grandmother, she was a preacher too, but she was really in the world for a long period of her life. And because of my mother giving her life to God and becoming a preacher at the age of 13, she brought her mother to God. And then my grandmother became a preacher. But my grandmother used to be the Avon lady, going door to door selling Avon. I would go door to door with her. I loved that. But she was quick-witted. And so this day that this wino had come into the tent, was looking over her, she jumped up and says, "What can I do for you? What do you think about Jesus? Do I need to pray with you?" I was like, what is grandma doing? And she prayed with him, and then he went on about his way. But I used to love to watch my mother preach because she never preached long. Whenever she was going to be the preacher, it's going to be about 15 minutes. I mean, it's 15 minutes, but it's going to be power packed. I mean, she was going to give it to you. Whatever God said to her, she was going to deliver that message to you. And I love that about my mom. She would say that when God stopped talking, she stopped speaking. And, if many of us would live our lives that way, we'd probably have a lot less foolishness and a lot less to say. But I really appreciate it. I didn't know as a young person how much I would appreciate the values that my mom lived by and the way that she served God. Because I knew in my life as I grew up, if there wasn't anybody else in the world that was a Christian, I knew my mom loved God and believed in God and really had faith in God. And that's the same faith that I use. And so as we look at holding a job, what are some of the values of working a job? There are many benefits that people gain from working a job. Financial stability. There's no way to really be independent unless you are working a job or owning a business. And I may talk about each of those. But financial stability, oftentimes we can develop our skills as we work a job. The first job that I ever had, I was in Skyline Acres. And my dad told me and my brother we're going to have to get a job somewhere. And so there was a golf course in the neighborhood, believe it or not, Clover Nook Golf Course over by Skyline. And I used to ride my bike there and I would caddy. And that was the first job that I had. I'd ride my bike there. I'd caddy. You get 50 cents or $1 for caddying. As I got a little older, you could carry 2 bags. I was just a little toothpick. So I start off with 1 bag, but then I tried to carry 2 bags. I mean, it was just like, you just logging, those bags, those big old gigantic bags of clubs around. And these men would just be walking and you'd be sort of walking, trailing behind them with these big bags of clubs. But I never forget at the end of 9 holes or 18 holes, you'd have, $1.75, $2. Oh man, I would go to the candy stand and I would get myself some licorice or some other kind of candies. But I knew I was rich because of the money that I had in my pocket. And then I would ride back home and then ride back, every other day to try to do this job. And so I appreciated that job. The next job that I had was when we moved to Forest Park. Actually in Scotland, we were cutting grass. And so cutting grass, you don't find many people anymore today. I don't know about you, but you don't find that many young people that are going door to door trying to see if they can cut somebody's grass. And man, I enjoyed making money. And so I was cutting grasses in Skyline. And then when I got to Forest Park, I was cutting the yards of some of my father's friends and people that he knew. And I could get $5 or $7 for cutting grass. Man, that was big money. And I'll never forget, I cut the grass of one of our neighbors on Waycross, and then sort of wrapped up early. They weren't home. They paid me in advance. I cut their grass, and then I ran home to get on my bike so I could go play basketball. And my father drove down the street, and he didn't like the job I did. So I was up at Forest Park High School playing ball outside, having a ball, $8 in my pocket. They tipped me. I had 10. Eric, come here. He said, you need to get in the car. Okay. I knew I was in trouble. And so I drove back with him. He said, and then he stopped at their house. He said, let's get out and take a look at, he said, what do you see? I said, well, the lines are a little crooked. Yeah. What else do you see? Well, it looks like there's some blades of grass. Maybe I missed a couple spots. He said, exactly. He said, what I want you to do is take your bike, ride home. He said, and I want you to come back here and recut that lawn. This is not the kind of work that we do as Ellis's. So I rode home, man, and got my mower, walked it back down there and recut their entire grass, and then reclipped everything, because I did not want my father to be coming back and seeing a job that was half done. And so I learned the value of trying to do a good job. In everything that you do, you want to do your best. I don't think that people recognize the power and the value of hard work and doing your best work. I got to a place that I love to hear that smile in my father's voice or my mother's voice when I did something well. I remember how I started off as a kid. I started off hating work, hating jobs, hating assignments. And I don't know what happened, but one day it just kind of kicked in for me that this is an opportunity to get praise, that my parents are happier if I do jobs and do them well. And so I started asking my mother, hey, Mom, you need help do anything? Yeah, I was just wondering, that garage is such a mess. We used to hate the garage and the basement. I mean, those were the two worst jobs in the whole world, where your parents would say, okay, Saturday morning, we're going to go get the basement clean. The basement. Everybody knew there was dead bodies in the basement. I got to go clean the basement. And there were 5 of us. And so they'd set 2 or 3 of us loose down there. And then my father would say, okay, I'm gonna leave. When I come back, that garage better be spick and span. Anybody remember that lane? Spick and span. I hated it at first. But as I got older, I started recognizing that there was tremendous value in doing a good job and then sitting back before anybody else got to see it and saying to yourself, that looks good. I'm proud of that. And so, I was cutting grass, and then my first official job outside of caddying and cutting grass was when I was 16 years old. My father used to go up to a restaurant in Forest Park called the Scoreboard Restaurant. He would go there every Saturday morning, and that's where all of the black fathers and white parents, men would gather. It was a men's thing. They would gather on Saturday morning with John Stouffer. He was a former quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. And they would sit up there and they would literally talk about life and racism and just anything. That's what they would do. It was one of the first times that I ever seen an interracial group of men that would come together on Saturday morning just to sort of talk about life and debate things. And boy, they enjoyed that. And I guess on one of those days, John was talking about looking for good workers, and my father offered me up to work there at Scoreboard. And I'll never forget when he dropped me off to fill out the application. He said, now, son, he said, if you get this job, he said, look, don't you embarrass the family. He said, I want you to be the hardest worker they have. Yes, sir. So I get the job, and they put me in the back. So I'm hidden away in the back, flipping hamburgers and taking, doing the orders. Not up front, not with the cash register. I was in the back. So at first I started off working hard. But then when the managers would leave, I saw what everybody else was doing. They were making triple deckers. They were making double deckers with all kinds of special sauce. And then they would have a lookout, somebody that would look out to see when the manager was returning. So at first I was still too nervous to do that because I would hear my father's voice, son, don't embarrass the family. And so, at first I was still walking, working and everything. And then everybody's like, Eric, what are you doing, man? There's nobody here. No managers here. And so I was like, okay. And so I started letting things go, making triple deckers with all the special sauce on them, throwing extra cheese, lettuce, a 4-stack burger. I mean, I made all kinds of special burgers. And I would sit around and look at the clock. Have you ever worked a job where you sat around, did nothing, and just looked at the clock? I don't recommend that. You know what I learned? That if you sit around and look at the clock, guess what? Them hands don't move. They don't move at all. I was sitting there looking at the clock, looking out the window, and the day would take, if it was a 2-hour day, it'd take 5. If it was a 4-hour day, oh my goodness, it felt like 12 hours. I learned a valuable lesson from blowing work off, that is not a good thing, and it takes longer to not work than it does to work. So I said, forget that. I ain't doing that no more. That's the dumbest thing I ever did. So I started doing extra work. Now, I still love to talk, so I'd be talking, telling jokes, but I'd be cleaning the onions off. I'd be scraping the grill. I'd be going into the freezer, stacking up all the things. You know why? Because I knew that if I did all those things, that not only did the day go by fast, but when the boss got back, he'd look around and say, oh, Ellis was here. I like that. I like that. I like people saying that I did a good job. I felt like it was a reflection of my character. Doing a good job, being a hard worker is a reflection of your character. It builds character, and it also brings some other things that you need. If you want to stand out, if you want to receive notoriety, be a hard worker. And so as we think about Labor Day, I want you to think about your perspective on work. And most people that I run into hate work. There's just too many people. Oh my God, I got to go to work. Man, I would never want to do a job that I hated going to. But I've discovered that most jobs are first and foremost the people. And so work gives you an opportunity to develop meaningful relationships with people. And so I think that there's some real value to that. And so I'll go back to the job at Scoreboard. So I was working at Scoreboard, doing that job, flipping hamburgers. On Friday nights, the football games would happen. All my friends would come in from the high school and they'd be just laughing. Hey, they'd be hollering my name out. And I'm back there, I didn't want to look up because I'm trying to get these burgers right. But I still can fold up a hamburger and wrap it right now today because I learned to at 16 years old. But eventually, as I kept doing a good job in the back, they moved me to the front. And I got access to the cash register, and I was doing that and taking people's orders. And I felt responsible. I'm ADD, so sometimes, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't miscounting money. And I enjoyed the responsibility of being up front and just really enjoyed that job. The next job that I got after Scoreboard was working a summer job when I was going to college. Before I went to Anderson College, I got a job at a lawn maintenance firm that was doing sort of dikes. So we would do the lawns of Ford plants and other plants, where you take one of these big dike mowers and you'd mow areas. Oh man, you just mow back and forth, back and forth. And I would do that, man. And yeah, a lot of times if you got over there in the big weeds, man, chiggers and stuff would get on your legs. Oh my goodness. But we made pretty good money. And I enjoyed the job that summer. And the next summer I came back and they made me a supervisor. And so because of the way I worked, I was able to be elevated to a supervisor. And that was the first time I had a chance to really manage other people. And people would act as though, hey, you're cool. Let's figure out how not to work. And I was like, no, that's not how we do this. The same values that I had for myself, I also had for my crew. And I'll never forget, I had a guy, a lot of times when you're on these little crews, a lot of guys working there, there's a lot of testosterone going. So this guy was telling me one time, oh man, you ain't nothing, man. I could take you out. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I had the strength of youth and the arrogance of an athlete. And so I said, well, man, if you think you could take me, let's just go and wrestle when we get back to the shop. Yeah, let's do it. And so, he's talking smack all the day. As soon as we got back, we got out the parking lot. Boom, we out there wrestling. I picked him up, slammed him down. But then I slammed him down and got my head kind of in a little backwards headlock. So I was on top, but he had my head. That was the first time in my life that I just literally concentrated on making my head smaller, because I didn't want him to know that he had no advantage. I had my forearm in his neck, but I was in headlock. But I stuck my head out, and then I had him in the, just a waste of time. And just before I felt like he was about to get up, I got up and declared victory. And that was the crazy things that we did in summer jobs as a supervisor. Yeah, as a supervisor of a lawn maintenance firm. And then that was the last time that I worked a job like that. My father brought me on within his company, BSA, Behavioral Science Application. My dad was the president of his own consulting business. And he then appreciated my work ethic and thought in many ways that I reminded him of himself. So he brought me on his company as an intern. I was an artist, and so I was, loved logo designs and things like that. And so he brought me on to sort of do kind of logo designs and design work. And I remember I was building a game for them and working on logos, and just enjoyed learning from my father and watching him do this work that I've now done for the last 3 decades. I never imagined that time. I guess I thought maybe I would be a part of his company and maybe even one day be a trainer or consultant. And so when I was working for them, it was him and Merlin Pope and Pat Pope and Eric Pennebaker. And there were a lot of other people. What's his name? Oh, his name just got away from me. But there's another fantastic consultant that's still Roland West. Roland West was a tremendous consultant. So they had a dream team. Chip Henderson did some work with them periodically. And I just remember sitting in on some of my father's workshops. And it almost looked exactly like my mother's revivals. So I would go to my mother's revivals. I would go to my father's workshops, and people were crying in both of them. People were crying in my mother's revivals because they were wanting to repent of their sinful ways and giving their lives to God. And then in my father's workshops, sometimes people were crying because of the pain that they had experienced because of bias and discrimination, or they were crying because they knew that things were unfair for others and they thought that that was wrong and they wanted to make a change. And so a lot of times when people talk about the old days of diversity work, they talk about it as though those were the horrible days where mistakes were being made everywhere. But I saw those conversations as powerfully transparent, honest, transformative conversations that made a difference in people's lives. And so I enjoyed watching my father as a master of this work. And I didn't realize it. My father died at a young age. He was 48 years old when he died. He died of a massive heart attack. And I tell people that I believe that the reason that my father may have died early is because oftentimes he cared more about the organizations than they maybe cared about this work. And so sometimes if you care more about your job, your work than others do, that can take a great toll on you. And so that's one thing that I learned is that I care deeply about every client that I serve, but I can't care more than they do. And so at the end of the day, you got to make sure that you're also taking care of yourself. I went on from working for my father as an intern, playing basketball in college. I went to Anderson College for 2 years, played there. Then I transferred to Wright State. My dad was there as an assistant dean. So while he was working his own business, they were having up and down times. But they had contracts with companies like General Motors, GE, Ford, some of the biggest companies on the planet they were doing business with. And my father kept saying to me, Eric, my ship is about to come in. And I'll never forget that, and it always seemed like a pipe dream, like we're poor, he's talking about his ship is coming in. But his ship did eventually come in. Unfortunately, it came in after he passed. And then his partner took that business over. It became a multi-million-dollar consulting business. My father knew that would eventually be the case. But I played basketball in college at Wright State University. We won the national championship. Then after I got out, I went back to school, got my master's degree. And then my first job after graduate school was working at the University of Cincinnati. And while I was in graduate school, I interned for the city of Cincinnati. And I interned for a man that's still well known in the city of Cincinnati, Russell Harrison. That was one of my first bosses with the city. He was a funny guy. He was hilarious. He made work enjoyable. We all worked under Paul White, who was the head of our area over at HUD. I think it was something like that. I can't remember the exact title. But he made work enjoyable. We laughed. I had friends at the job. And again, I enjoyed trying to deliver my best work there. And then after I got out of graduate school, I was on my way to Atlanta. So when I got out of graduate school, everybody Black was going to Atlanta, and I was on my way to Atlanta. I had my master's degree. I'm going. I went to Atlanta. Paul White had told me, when you go to Atlanta to visit, make sure you connect up with Richard Monte. And he gave me Richard Monte's phone number and everything. And he was the deputy finance director for the city of Atlanta. And so I went there. I connected with Richard Monte. Richard Monte knew everybody. So he took me to a Georgia Tech college basketball game. And so we went there together. I met the coach, the assistant coach then was Perry, and just had a ball and went to some other events. When you go to Atlanta with somebody that knows Atlanta and is connected, it's a completely different experience than when I went there by myself. I went there one time by myself. I was like, what's the big deal with Atlanta? And then when I went there with Richard Monte, he was a young leader for the city of Atlanta. I felt like I'd never been to a place where I saw so many people of color that were in charge. And so I felt like, who wouldn't want to be here? And so Richard Monte said to me, Eric, just come to Atlanta. You don't have to worry about, we're going to get you a job. That's not going to be a problem. Just come to Atlanta and you're going to be fine. And so I came back to Cincinnati with every intention to relocating from Cincinnati, born in Cincinnati, to Atlanta, hot Atlanta. And when I came back, I had an interview with an unassuming woman named Dr. Jeanette Taylor at the University of Cincinnati. She was a dean of the College of Continuing Education. And that job, it was offering $22,000 a year. And I was like, no, no, I can't take this job. But she knew my father, and I could see that she could be maybe a great mentor for me. So I turned away all of my dreams about Atlanta, or delayed them, I thought. And I took the job at the University of Cincinnati. That's what kept me here, working for Dr. Jeanette Taylor as her matchmaker, program director of the matchmaker program. And the matchmaker program was the University of Cincinnati's connection to all the municipalities. And so I was working with city managers and trying to identify what their needs were and how the university could help them. And I did that job and met a lot of people in Cincinnati. Dr. Jeanette Taylor was a tremendous mentor. Everything big that she had to go to, she would take me with her. And I did that job for 3 years. And then finally, I told her I had felt like it was time for me to do something else. And she was like, Eric, you're doing great. I said, yeah, I appreciate that. But I think I need to move on to something that might be a little bit more challenging. And so I took a job at Inroads as a manager at Inroads. And then our wonderful program director, our managing director, Mrs. Armstrong, died. And the board promoted me to managing director of Inroads. And so I became the youngest managing director of an Inroads affiliate in the country. And so I was just excited to have that opportunity to sort of lead an affiliate. Inroads was an organization, a private nonprofit organization that was responsible for bringing in young people, talented young people, whether they were African American, Latinx, Native American. We brought in talented minorities and placed them with major corporations for internships. I've never done a job other than the one that I do right now that was more inspiring to me than being the managing director of Inroads. That's where I met Tommy Lewis. Tommy was one of my interns. Tommy was a ball of fire. He was bright. He was energetic. He was gifted. So I just met so many talented young people that inspired me. And here's a program that I couldn't have qualified for as a student in high school, because I was just blowing off high school, playing sports. Same thing in college until I got to graduate school. But I was grateful to be the managing director of Inroads. And I worked that job for about 4 years. And then Floyd and Jackie Dickens had a consulting firm, and they approached me and asked me would I be interested in doing some consulting with them. So I went to Inroads and said, I've got this opportunity, but I'd like to make it an opportunity for Inroads as well. I'd like you to sort of cut my pay in half. Let us hire someone else as assistant director, and let me also do this consulting job. And then a lot of the things that I learned there, I'll be able to bring them back to Inroads. And they thought about it. And Ray Brokamp was the chair of the board. Ray was open to it, but the rest of the board was kind of like, it was an idea that had been born before its time. And so they said, no, you're going to have to make a decision. And so I chose to leave Inroads and to start my own business. So Floyd and Jackie Dickens, they were doing a big amount of work within the CIA. And so they had recruited people to be contractors and consultants with them. So that's where I met Janet Reed. Dr. Janet Reed and I, she had been working as a consultant with Floyd and Jackie, and they paired us together. So Janet and I were in these different scenarios where we were training CIA officers. I mean, that was one of the wildest experiences that I ever had. You had to get clearance. So I got cleared to the level of secret. And once you got a clearance within the CIA, they were always trying to get you more clearances. I was like, no, I'm good. I remember I was traveling to Germany to do some training within the CIA. And it wasn't until I was in the air flying that I said, hold on, I'm going to train the CIA in Germany. They're probably not welcome there. And so I remember getting nervous, and I felt like I got more paranoid. When I was working with the CIA, you knew that people were always listening into your calls and your conversations. And so I felt like I got more paranoid than I was able to make a lot of headway. So I was glad I did that for about 3 years, I think. And I was glad when that assignment, wrapped up, because I was always just a little bit nervous that everything that I ever said and talked about was being listened to by 1,000 other people. But that was a learning experience as well. I remember we would do back in the early 90s, we would do sort of 3 and 4 day workshops with the CIA. It was like almost like a marathon. It was an endurance test. We would just train them all day and night. At night, they'd be doing special projects. I think our idea was just sort of to wear them out, beat them down until finally they said, yes, I do have prejudices. I do have biases. I'll get over them. And so that was quite an experience. But we would have them sort of on Friday do a little sort of presentation of what their team had come up with to sort of display the insights that they had gained over the week of sort of teamwork that they had done. Who thought of that idea with the CIA? Oh my God. It got to a place where we were just nervous every time a new group had to do a presentation. One group came up, their presentation was, what we learned is that biases are destructive and they're bad for an organization. So in this paper bag, we put racism. And somebody else threw sexism, heterosexism. They were throwing in the religious bias. And then they sort of got back, said, everybody stand back. And it blew up the bag. What are we doing? I mean, you literally got explosives in here, you're blowing up the isms? That was ridiculous. And then on another occasion, I was in there. They sort of had this bright idea that, they were going to demonstrate what it looked like to break the glass ceiling. So they had all these diverse people under a glass plane, sort of window pane. And then they got out and they threw a brick up in the air. Boom! Glass everywhere. What are we doing? And so we had to put some constraints on the presentations. I mean, people were just doing all kind of crazy stuff. We never trained them at the CIA headquarters in Alexandria. We always had to train them in hotels outside of in Manassas, Virginia. So we'd spend 4 days in the hotel with CIA officers. And you always knew who they were, because they would come to the hotel and they'd all have sort of jeans on, some kind of t-shirt, and then a little black box. That wasn't good. And so they would just sort of, their jokes were all these crazy things that they were doing around the world. I mean, it just, so I was glad to be done with that assignment. And then while I was working with Floyd and Jackie, they encouraged us to start our own business. And so in 1991, I started my own business, Integrity Development Corporation. And I am so grateful to have my own business. I remember when I named my company Integrity Development, I was so excited about that name. After my father died, I'd given my life to God and I was a Christian. And so I wanted to do everything based on integrity. And so I named my company Integrity Development. And I just waited, and I waited for my official paperwork to come back from the state. And then one day in the mailbox, there it was, my incorporation papers, Integrity Development Corporation. And then I started freaking out. Like, what? What did I do? Oh my goodness, why did I call my company Integrity Development? That's like the dumbest thing I could have done. People are going to be expecting me to be perfect, and nobody can be perfect. I mean, I was sweating. I was thinking about sending the paperwork back. I was like, oh my goodness, I made the biggest mistake on. And then I feel like God spoke to me and said, integrity is not an eternal resting place. Integrity is a destination. And your business name suggests that you want to always be headed towards integrity, honesty, decency. And when you fall short, you stand up, you dust yourself off, you apologize if necessary, and you head again towards integrity. I'll never forget one of the first pieces of business that I ever got was with the Red Cross. I was a young business, desperate for business. The Red Cross had a project that they had put out. I had a pretty good name in the city. And so I won the contract to a project that I had never done before. So here I am doing a job that I've never done before with ADD, unmedicated at that point because my kids were still babies. And man, I was just missing every time marker. I just literally was not doing a good job on this project. I missed our target dates for deliverables. Finally, I skid into home plate at the last minute, probably, 15, 20 days over the time. I felt so bad about it that $25,000 that I had been given, I gave it back. I was just so embarrassed at how many times I'd fumbled the ball that I didn't feel comfortable even taking their money. So I gave it all back. So I was desperate for the money. I did a horrible job. So I took a job I couldn't do, did a poor job at it, and I learned a lesson. I learned a hard lesson because I gave that money back. But there are so many lessons that you can learn as an entrepreneur. There are many benefits that Tommy and I both talk about being entrepreneurs. One of the benefits is freedom and flexibility. When you're an entrepreneur, you have the freedom. The first thing you get to do, let me see where it is. The first thing you get to do, where are they? I'm looking for them. Where are they? How can you run a business? There it is. I'll be right back. The first thing you get to do as an entrepreneur is you get to create your own business card. Look at that. That's the first thing you get to do. You get to create your own business card, and then you get to put it on there. President and CEO. Woo! So you're Mr. Big Shot. You got your own business cards. You just don't have any business. And so having the freedom and flexibility is fine, but too much freedom is not fine. Too much flexibility is not fine. That means you don't have any business. And so although there is a benefit to having freedom and flexibility, there's also a downside of that if you don't have any business. And so the first thing you have to do is really hustle every day. And so I got into the habit of getting up early and working late. And as an entrepreneur, you don't end your day when, at a certain time. You end your day when the work is done, when you've gotten business. If you don't work, you don't eat. And you learn how to hunt and how to kill things that you can eat quickly, because you can't be working on projects that are going to kick in next year. You got to be able to feed yourself today. And then when you have a staff, you got to be able to feed other people. And so you really do have to spend time working hard. The potentials for financial rewards. There is great potential for making a lot of money as an entrepreneur. As much as I enjoy selling, I've surprised myself that I'm not always that inspired by selling. I love what I do. I love what we do. The work that we do at Integrity Development, helping organizations create people-centered workplaces. I'm so passionate about that. And I love creating solutions, whether they be training solutions, consulting solutions, talent searches. I love the work that we do. I love it more than selling. And so, but what I've discovered is that if you do a good job, then your quality work will ultimately intersect with more opportunities, because we've grown our business basically by word of mouth. We've never done any advertisement in the 3 decades that I've been in business. And I'm grateful to those clients that have chosen to work with us. I know Tommy feels the same way. We have the exact same passion for the organizations and the people that we serve. Being an entrepreneur also gives you a chance for personal growth and development. When you make mistakes, you learn from that. I've had to apologize to clients. I've had to apologize to participants. I had a participant come up to me last year and say that when I was in a conversation with 3 or 4 other participants, they felt as though I ignored them, and uh, and I was just disheartened by that. And what I did was I not only apologized to them, but I waited till everybody got back in the room and I apologized in front of the rest of the class. When you make a mistake, then you want to make sure that you go back and correct that. And sometimes it's important to correct that publicly. So being an entrepreneur gives you a chance to continue learning. I still, sometimes it's painful, but I know that I have to continue learning, growing, and developing. At every age, there is no end to the learning curve. I've enjoyed learning the power of AI and learning about ChatGPT and other AI platforms that enable us to take advantage of so much information. I work in a sort of a knowledge business. And so information is power. And so I'm grateful to be able to continue to grow and to develop. Today, I look on eBay a lot, but I've never really sold things on eBay. And now I'm even sort of starting to even work on selling things on eBay. That's something new for me. And so, but I really enjoy the growth and development aspect of being an entrepreneur, being able to develop tools, surveys, assessments, research tools, being able to listen to our clients and see the things that we're developing together, deliver solutions that make a difference for those organizations. I'm grateful for that. Creating value. A lot of times when you do good work as an entrepreneur, you get a chance to create value within those clients that you serve as well. Most of you may be familiar that the Supreme Court recently overturned affirmative action within colleges and university admissions departments. But that's actually it's going to ultimately trickle into corporate America as well. And I have a CEO at one of my companies that the day after the Supreme Court overturned the case, he met with the Diversity Council, which we call a core council, and said, look, nothing changes here. He said, we are going to be even more committed to this work around diversity. He said, we've made a lot of progress over the last 3 or 4 years, but we've got a lot more work to do. And so I was just so grateful to hear his passion. And his passion for diversity is because he's been engaged and he sees the value of this to him personally and to the success of the organization and to the culture, creating a culture that's people-centered, where all of his employees are beginning to gain a sense of belonging. And this is not an easy journey because there's so many different perspectives that people have about the work that we do. Another benefit of entrepreneurship is being able to create a legacy. And so I know that I've talked about my father almost every day that I've been in business. Almost every keynote address that I kick off, I'll start by introducing myself as the son of a mother who's a preacher and a father who was a pioneer in the field of diversity. And so his legacy is one that I still reflect on. And I want my business to hopefully leave a legacy as well. I am so grateful that my children are older now, and several of them think they might even want to work in the business. There's nothing more exciting as a parent than to know that your children may want to take what you've started and take that to a whole nother level. So building a legacy. When you're an entrepreneur, you also have an opportunity to, for empowerment and control. When you run your own business, you are the boss. The buck stops here. But you are empowered in good days and bad days. Empowerment means you also are responsible. I am so grateful for the people that are part of the Integrity Development family. Sarah Storage, Suzanne Collins have been with me for years and years and years, almost 20 years. And each of them are a gift to our business. This business does not grow, it does not succeed without Sarah, without Suzanne, without Wendell as one of our senior consultants, and many of the other consultants that we have that work with us. I'm grateful for what they deliver to the success of this business. When you have people that are great workers, they are loyal to the business. That's what I can say about Sarah and Suzanne, that they are both loyal. They are trustworthy. I trust them with my life. I trust them with my resources, my bank account, all my passwords, doesn't matter. They know everything about my life. And I know I'm in good hands, because when you have people who love God, but also love doing good work and are hard workers, man, that's what Labor Day is really about. It's celebrating people that might not be seen by others. I'm the one that gives keynote speeches everywhere. But the people who make my PowerPoints and the people who schedule my travel and all those arrangements and pay the bills and all those things, those people are behind the scenes for you, but they're in living color and center stage for me. So I'm grateful. I've had people in the past that work for me. See, I'm a trustworthy boss. I'm a trusting boss. And so I had person, man, if you're running my books, man, you're going to be able to rob me. I'm just telling you, you'll be able to rob me, because I ain't looking over your shoulder at all. I'm trusting you with all the passwords and all the accounts. So if you want to take my identity, it's gone, because I trust people. And I'm grateful to have people that are trustworthy, loyal, hard workers, family. That's what I would say. The people that work at Integrity Development, I would say that I love them. LOVE, love them. And I've grown from their feedback. In other words, if they don't sit me down and give me feedback, then we don't get better. If you are a boss or lead anything, manage any team, and you're not hearing some criticism, some critical feedback from them, then you need to make sure that you work to create this kind of psychological safety that's necessary for people to be able to be open and honest and forthright. Because if they can do that, then you can grow as an individual, and your department or your business can grow as well. So I'm grateful for that. The last thing is opportunity for passion and purpose. Being an entrepreneur has given me an opportunity to live out my passion. As I look at the world today, I see it as being on fire in many ways. We are not, I tell people all the time that the people in this country aren't as divided as we're told we are. But if you keep telling people they hate each other, before they know it, they'll be fighting in the streets. And so I feel like that God has given me the opportunity and the assignment to, in many ways, to be a now day, a current day superhero. I get to tie on my cape and sort of go out to the world and try to make a difference. And I can only make a difference through people. And so as I partner with others within organizations and outside of organizations, then together we have a chance to make this world a better place. There is no group, there are no individuals that I don't love. I'm not fighting for some people and not fighting for others. I fight for all people. And I'm grateful to be able to do that. And so I thank you for tuning in to this episode of Diversity Conversations. I miss Tommy Lewis when he's not here because now I have to talk to myself, and talk to those of you that have joined us. But Tommy Lewis is going to be back next week. I love him. He is absolutely my brother. And on this Labor Day weekend, I'm glad that he is resting and taking advantage of the long weekend. And I'm grateful for the work that he does, the way that he works, the way that he respects his clients and those that work as a part of Make It Plain Consulting. So enjoy the weekend. I hope some of you get to do some cooking out, and others of you, I hope that you are doing something meaningful in the way of work that you value and appreciate. Take care of each other and continue to enjoy diversity conversations. Take care now.